is Kevin Driscoll. I'm a PhD student at University of Southern California in communication. I'm also a member of Students for Free Culture, and I'm moderating a panel today that is about hip-hop culture and fair use. And I remember when I first emailed these folks on the panel, I said, well, we're going in the afternoon, so people are going to kind of cover the basics. And that happened. So we're going to be focused on Q&A. We're going to be focused on conversation. And I'm going to try to be the medium through which your tweets make it up to the stage. So please be forthcoming with your thoughts, both electronically and especially with your voices. And we'll do our best to incorporate that. So you know a little bit about me. We're going to introduce the rest of the folks on the panel. Then I'm going to say a few words, and then we're going to kind of like get right into it in a conversational mode. All right? So let's try the mics.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Maybe turn this one down a little.
Turn me up. Yo. Okay. Oh, cell phones?
It's called GSM buzz, right? Okay. That name is. Why don't we start under the live tweet at it?
Hey, my name is Himanshu Kumar Suri. I'm turning my phone off so I'm not going to live tweet. And I'm 1/3 of That's Racist, unfortunately.
I'm Victor Vasquez. I'm also in That's Racist.
I'm Michelle Kanabolu. I'm also in this group. I'm 3/8 of the group.
I'm Larissa Mann, and I'm also in Das Racist. No, I'm DJ Ripley. I DJ in San Francisco and travel about when I can, playing global bass music, or whatever it's called nowadays. And I'm also a PhD student in jurisprudence and social policy at UC Berkeley Law School, and my work is on copyright and creativity, so I kind of do it all at the same time as much as possible. And my fieldwork, I do legal anthropology, and my fieldwork is Jamaica, so I spent about a year living in Kingston and getting to know creative practices there and how people deal with law and a bunch of other fun stuff. So I'll probably be talking both about my own practices as a DJ and also things that I've learned from people in Jamaica. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple opening remarks. The first thing is that our topic is interesting among some of these other ones, and especially when we're looking at some of the artists and the game makers and that. See if I can move this over. And that this hip-hop conversation about fair use and copyright is an old one. And we heard this morning about some of the key cases that involve hip-hop recordings and artists that are now almost 20 years old. And those are familiar, well-tread examples. But in a lot of ways, they never really got to what was important about the cultural aspects of hip-hop. So on the screen here, I'm suggesting a new iconography of hip-hop technology. We often think about like the microphones, maybe the turntable, maybe the sampler, but the mixer is really the tool that defines the culture, because the sounds of hip-hop change. The sound of the 2 Live Crew song doesn't sound like That's Racist, but the mixer is there, and the mixer is that tool that doesn't generate its own sound. It's an instrument that doesn't have a string that you pluck or something like that. It's the instrument that connects to all the other instruments. So this is a pretty modern mixer. It's kind of like the one that DJ Rupture will be using in a little while. And you can plug a lot of different things into it. So if you have something that makes sounds and it puts out those RCA cables, like the stereo cables, you can try to plug it into the mixer. And then you'll be able to affect it in different ways, put little sound effects on it, change its levels in relation to the other things that come through it. And the mixer provides us with a really good metaphor for thinking about how hip-hop culture deals with the material culture that's around it. Because you just plug it in and see if you can balance it against the other things that are already plugged in, and see how they'll work against each other. So that's kind of where we're starting. I'm trying to start us from a really expanded view of what hip-hop is. Because since 1992 and 1993, when hip-hop started to have a rise as a really powerful commercial music, that history has mapped with a lot of interesting changes that have taken place in law and in policy. So 1998 is an important year for thinking about copyright law and thinking about the way that it interacts with the internet through Digital Millennium Copyright Act. That's also the year that DMX put out 2 albums that were platinum. Who sells 1 platinum album now? And he had 2 in 1 year. That's like the commercial peak of selling CDs, is that same year. So all right, we have this picture of hip hop. Hip hop, the way that you make that music is also the way you make every other kind of music now. It's the idiom for making music, is assembling loops of things and putting things together. It doesn't matter if it has like boom bap and people rapping on it. It could be a Taylor Swift song. You still use the same tools, there's still mixers. The logic of assembling that song is the same. So there's 4 kind of broad areas that we're going to talk about in our presentation today. The first one is moving past sampling, and we kind of had that conversation so far, but Dan Lynch, I thought, kind of pointed at this when he said his camera was a sampler. Because there you see the logic of sampling and the culture of sampling applied to a place that it wouldn't have been before. So that those words are bleeding over certain kinds of boundaries into other areas of art. We saw John Raffman borrowing artifacts of information services industries, taking things and reusing them in that way. And so that's kind of about the studio practice. And so the people we have on our panel today are practitioners who make things. And we're going to hopefully we're going to get some stories out of them about what it's like to actually make stuff. And we got to see a little bit of that process earlier today. But when you make things, you also produce artifacts. And artifacts is kind of like the second area that we're going to talk about. Because the artifacts of hip-hop culture are very explicitly tools in a lot of ways. So the vinyl single lasted for a long time in hip-hop, not because people like to listen to one song on a record, but because the record was a tool. And when you look at the label that's attached to a hip-hop single, one side will say it's like radio version and dirty version or something like that. If you flip it over, it says instrumental a cappella. Now, I don't know how many people are just listening to the a cappella version of these songs, but that is an explicit invitation for you to enter into that work, for you to do something with that thing. And in the example of DJ Drama that Aram brought up, we saw how that is a tricky space to work in. That kind of tacit approval or benign neglect that we've been kind of celebrating today so far is a really tricky space. Because one area of your industry is the area that gives that benign neglect, but the other area is the one that invokes the power to take it away. So we need to be kind of careful when we talk about that. And then lastly, we need to talk about platforms. So Joshua Caleb Webley, apologize if I mispronounce your name, said that he doesn't put his art on Facebook because he said that terms of use are unstable. And we've been looking at a lot of music communities lately who have come together around sites like iMeme or MySpace or YouTube, only to be taken apart. And that our trust in these platforms is starting to really disintegrate. If we're going to have a popular music culture, we want to put it onto a site. Do we care if it's there in a year? Do we care if it's there in 6 months? Because on YouTube, a lot of videos don't even last 6 months. And maybe you don't go back to the same URL. Maybe the video is still there, but another user had to re-up it and the quality is degraded. So our third area, kind of just broadly thinking about this, is one of platforms. All right, so now I thought we would kind of move into a storytelling mode. So we'll start with a song. And I asked our panelists if they could provide us with some artifacts of their own. So this is a song from a Das Racist mixtape. You guys getting nervous about what it's going to be? All right, so I'm just going to play the song. Presumably it will come out of some speakers in this room, although I don't know where they are. And then I'm going to ask you guys to tell us about making the song. Okay. Sound good? Okay.
Who's that? Brown, brown. Who's that? Brown, brown. Who's that? Brown, who's that? Who's that? Brown, brown. Who's that? Brown, who's that? Brown, who's that? Brown.
it. Oh, I think you like it. Maybe you should.
Question for the audience: what's the sample? All right, so this song starts with a sample that's from the Beatles. The Beatles on hip hop.
Leaders of the new school, yeah, I think we had to watch it too. Two dudes, wasn't that?
So, what's the question?
The question is the request.
Oh, what is a request?
Yeah.
What was it like making that song?
The request is this. So you didn't make the beat for the song.
No. We came up with the idea kind of, and then
Nah, Talk came up with the idea.
our friend came up with the idea, and then we kind of took it from there.
What does it mean? Take it from there.
Oh no, then we had somebody make the beat.
We
for
had
us.
someone else.
Take
We
it from
basically
there.
had one person sample. Sorry, we had one person sample.
Yeah.
Yeah?
There's
Okay.
people watching on the internet.
Oh shit! All right.
Shout out the internet.
What's up, internet? We had our friend Tall Rosen, who was in my other band at the time. We didn't have him do anything. He was like, "Do you want to use this?" He sampled a Tribe Called Quest, the leaders of the new scenario, you know. And the beat was a little dinky. My bad, Tall. And we gave it to our friend Saba, DJ Sabzi, who is a producer for the Blue Scholars, who he made the beat, basically, and then we rapped on it.
So you had a conversation, and then they went away, and they came back with a beat.
Yeah. Sometimes beats are kind of given to us. Sometimes we might, have some comments on them, and then tool around with them before we go in the studio and rap on them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, occasionally, we'll produce something ourselves, but most of it is other people producing.
Did you know what you were going to say on the song before you got to the studio?
Probably had a general idea of rapping about feeling weird because of my skin color, and maybe a thing or two about the internet. Hey. Rule of thumb.
What's the studio look like that you recorded the vocals in?
It's really expensive looking.
I don't know what expensive looking looks like.
It's
Is
like,
it expensive looking gear?
It's made out of gold.
It was
It's like a real nice.
We recorded in a basement in Bushwick, and we recorded in a studio that was being shared for an office space for a media company, and it was just one room with a couch, some monitors, a bunch of analog synths we didn't really use, and then a vocal booth, but it wasn't anything too serious or anything like that. I mean,
It's pretty cool.
mostly a friend of ours from high school that we record with for free because we don't have a studio. And that was one of the things, we didn't really have, the money to buy a lot of this type of equipment, so it wasn't until we had friends that were doing music that we started making music ourselves.
Yeah. Did you know what you were going to do with the song when you made it?
Not really. I don't think we don't really go into songs that much with an idea of this is what we're trying to do. It's more kind of, we'll sit amongst ourselves, write something, and 9 times out of 10 it's of a similar kind of ilk, and then,
Yeah. The song is track 1 on a mixtape. I always get the names of the two mixed up. Which one?
The first is called Shut Up Dude, and the second is called Sit Down Man.
Yeah. I have a question about the song. Has the song ever touched tape? Has it ever been on magnetic tape?
Nope.
No.
No.
So you can get the songs in both mixtapes on the That's Racist website. Both of them came out in the last year.
Yeah, 2010. One was March, the other was September.
Uh-huh. And when you get the mixtape, what do you get? Like if I go to your website and I get it right now, what do I get?
You get a zip file, you unzip the zip, and the folder has the same name as the zip file. Within the zip file are, I think, 17, and then 20 tracks, and the next one in 2 JPEG files that have the front and back cover right. And they're all ID3 tagged up by yours truly.
Ready to go. Tag them and bag them,
Dab's ID3 game is really,
His ID3 game is
really
insane.
something to behold.
It's crazy.
So ID3 tag is the metadata that has all the song titles and everything on it. Do you ever see your songs that have the ID3 tag messed up on it?
Yeah, there was a couple of ones. We had a song called Fake Patois that turned out as Fake Patios. Which is actually a dope song we're going to do. That's probably our next track that's coming out. With Didos, yeah, it's a Dido sample.
Reclaiming Veranda too.
Oh, true.
So we've kind of heard about mixtapes a little bit in a couple of the earlier presentations, but we've been saying it as though it's obvious what it is. So here this mixtape you produce in all these different ways. You don't know the song's going to be on the mixtape.
No, we all had a crush on the same girl, and we just put the songs that we like on it with a note to her. It had 3 boxes on it, and it says, Dap, Hema, and Victor, which one of us do you like? And she didn't like any of us.
So
She wrote Arcade Fire, made her own box, checked it, gave it back to us.
that's when you decided to make it public.
Yeah, that's when we gave it away.
That's when we went public, yeah.
So you can get a mixtape now that is a zip file, and there's an interesting site that you can check out if you're curious about mixtapes.
DatPiff?
DatPiff, yeah. DatPiff is a site where people are posting hundreds of mixtapes in this same format. Until today, you think? No, this is not a secret website. Wow, I'm really sorry to the worldwide hip-hop community if I ended this website by
Helping
mentioning
kill
this
hip-hop
conference.
today, right here.
Good to know. But the thing that I think's curious about mixtapes is that they have a start as a record. It's like a recording of an event, of a DJ making a mix. So there could be a DJ playing on the radio, playing in their bedroom, studio.
Ours
and they-
wasn't even a DJ. We never had anybody mix them together or anything. I mean, the first track, I think, we were rapping over kind of other people's production more, and so there's like 7 or 8 tracks. By the end of it, we only used 3 of those songs, and the rest was all original production. And the second album, or mixtape, and we use them interchangeably because they kind of are, was all original production. But I mean, you know, part of kind of, I guess, what we're talking about today is just that a lot of those samples, there's no way we could clear, especially as independent artists, and there's no real platform for independent rap anymore. So unless you're on a major and you got these lawyers that'll clear these samples for you, you're basically just putting out, you know, mixtapes, even if it's original production, because depending on it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'm kind of interested in is then where does the DJ mix go? And I think, Larissa, you can talk a little bit more about the role that DJs have in this place. So if we were talking the other day about SoundCloud as a site that had certain affordances that were a benefit to a DJ. So why would a DJ not put out a mixtape and post just a single MP3 file?
Well, I mean, it depends what people mean by DJ or who they're talking about, because I think what music is a practice. It's an activity, and the recordings are part of the activity, but they're not the whole story. And so whether you're blogging about music and you post, say, MP3s on your blog, you're using the music as vocabulary in a larger conversation and a larger interaction. And DJs do that without the text commentary. And conversation sounds still too text-based for me, because you're having a sort of social interaction with dancing people, and if you're DJing live, or with audiences on the internet if you're playing on web radio or whatever. And so all of those, everybody involved in that is sort of part of the music in a certain way. And so, I mean, I guess the reasons why people wouldn't post them would be if they were afraid it was going to get taken down, or afraid of some negative side of exposure. So with SoundCloud, SoundCloud actively recruited DJs to participate in this website where you could upload music, and I was part of several different communities that were targeted to say, please come and host. We'll host your stuff and you can post it. And there's a lot of wonderful things about the way it was designed. I think that were really useful. And they eventually started charging for if you were using it a lot, and they were charging by the minutes of music uploaded. So not amount of data, but length of the song, which to me suggests they were really aiming at mixes, especially because usually, like, most of my mixes are an hour long. So, whereas if I was if I was an artist posting my own songs, I might instead be going for really high quality audio. And I was still uploading some high quality audio, but it didn't matter the quality as much as the length mattered. And anyway, once SoundCloud got big enough to be on the radar of, I think it was Universal, they started getting a bunch of takedown threats, and so they started taking down all the music. And it's true that their terms of service had always said that they were for hosting original music, but the practice was really different, and all of us who participated gave our music and our creativity and our data to them, and other people joined because we were on it and because our music was on it. And so part of what I think is a theme of today that hasn't come out as much, but that I am interested in, is that it's partly about the way communities and groups of people engage with culture, that should create rights in itself, and that individuals suing for individual control or access isn't going to get you at the same place that looking at community practices will get you. And so part of what I'm really hoping can come out of the policy side of the discussions is that I think whatever you call it, whether it's fair use or something else, needs to look at people's practices as they are rather than the person who can afford to hire a lawyer and bring on a case, because not everyone is ever going to be able to afford that. But so like hip-hop culture, or the various cultures in hip-hop culture, people were drawing on the culture that was around them. And anyone could have seen that if you went and looked. You could have seen that. And going to some sort of abstract principle about creativity, it just doesn't make as much sense as looking at what people are doing. So that's part of what I think DJs represent, one of those ways of looking at that. You can look at what DJs do and say, oh, there's this engagement with this creative community. And legality becomes an issue when it I don't know how to say, when it becomes an issue, but it's nothing to do with creativity. So I think it's important to keep those things separate. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Have you personally had an experience with a takedown or a cease and desist?
No, not yet. I post my mixes up. I have some on SoundCloud. I have some elsewhere hosted by friends. I use commercial pop music. I use extreme experimental whatever music. I use music my friends give me that hasn't ever been released. It's all mixed together on there, but I'm sure somebody could argue that it was in violation, and someone else could argue that it's fair use. And to me, I want it to happen, whatever kind of argument you use to get there. I want it to keep happening, to keep being part of a musical community, but I haven't ever so far received any threats about that.
Have any of you had experiences having a song or a video taken down or received a notice about it?
We've never had anything taken down. I think we were trying to license Who's That Brown, and obviously that was kind of a difficult process. And I think even the prospect of taking the vocals off would still kind of put us in a territory where we would owe them money, because the song itself got some acclaim with their sample in it, and so at that point even removing the sample wouldn't do anything, which I thought was interesting. But no one's ever told us to take anything down.
So you talked to people who suggested taking the sample out would be a possible way to go forward?
Yeah, just based on kind of what percentage of publishing they wanted. Yeah, just at that point it was insane.
What would you have done if you had to take the sample out?
I think at that point we would have to figure out a way to work with them anyway, because they knew that the song had, Charlie Brown's voice on it, so it was too late. So, at that point, we would either turn it down or figure out a way to work with them that was still reasonable for us, but probably just turn it down. And then it ended up taking too long to get done, and so they just ended up moving forward with somebody else anyway, so.
Yeah. Could the song Who's That Brown exist without the sample?
No. No way.
Yeah. And another thing I'm curious about...
Probably shouldn't say that for future stuff and dealing with them, but I can't.
Yeah, it could, maybe, sure.
Yeah, totally.
The case closed a little bit from if it didn't work out before.
Yeah.
So that leads me to another interesting question, which is, before the song comes out, when you're in the studio, you had the idea for the song that was kind of based on the sample a little bit, or at least the beat was. So have you had a situation, now that you had that experience with licensing, where you had a beat come across your table and it had a sample in it,
and you had to think twice about whether to rap on it because maybe this situation would come up again?
No, I mean, there's samples all over both of those things, and we give it away for free, and then the money we make is off of touring and merchandising and like now licensing, and that's how it is for most bands that aren't like the top 20 bands in the world, you know. Like,
I mean, I'd say that said, I mean, even though we're unsigned, you know, we're talking to a couple people about putting out a formal debut record, but we're also beginning that process upon ourselves. And I mean, I think on this next project that we're looking to sell, we are kind of thinking about beats differently and not really working on any beats that would have a blatant sample on it. But then, I mean, if you look at like a song like Return to Innocence, I mean, we're sampling that because it was, you know, there was a whole court case about that song and how it was an Aborigine drinking song, and then Enigma kind of took that without ever clearing rights for that. So we thought it'd be funny to sample a song that got in trouble for sampling another song. And like, I mean, what are they gonna do? They're gonna sue us for fuck that. I mean,
So, Larissa, you didn't mention this as much, but Larissa just came back from a second round of fieldwork in Jamaica, and I wondered if some of the observations you had there matched their experiences, or if you saw things that were different, or if you could build up some contrasts or comparisons between this kind of like American and Jamaican way of handling this music.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would start with sort of something which has been growing as I've watched all of these, the presentations so far today, which is that sometimes I feel a bit impatient with the way, the sort of framing of how what artists are doing and what this group of artists is doing is really original, say, and not derivative or something like that. Because I think basically human interaction is reflexive, you can't separate producers from consumers. I mean, that's what it means, especially physically, to be in the same room with people, you know, and sort of geography puts in kind of different power differentials where you can't reach everybody. But if you're interacting with another person face to face, all of the sort of magical things that were being put up on the board is something amazing about new artistic creation. I'm like, well, that's what humans do all the time. That's what it means to be alive with other people. So to some extent, all creative practices, I think, have different ways of being interactive, and the question of whether it's original or not, or whether it's infringing or not, or whether it's whatever, all those terms only have to do with the power that comes from having those terms attached. So the thing is, if I say my work is original, that means I get certain rights that I don't get if I say it's not original. I don't know what it means other than that. In some places it means it's good. But I mean, when I was in Jamaica, I remember watching a music competition where they have lots of like, American Idol type stuff. So people, vocalists would get up and sing over a backing track, in front of judges. And one vocalist got up and he did or sang or chatted his piece. And one of the judges said, who's a big producer in Jamaica, said, well, you're a pretty good vocalist and the lyrics are all right, but the music, you came and you brought this music that you made yourself, and it's just not really good. I wish you'd used a really original piece, one that's been out in the market, out in the audience, and like has been shown to be a really good song, So, for him, what original meant was something completely different than what like the law might say. But fair enough. Like the only reason that word matters in a certain way is because the law has decided that word matters. And then when you get into in Jamaica, where does that law come from? Well, the original one was British, and now the new one is basically written to be in compliance with the WTO, which is informed by WIPO, which is nothing really to do with Jamaicans' daily lives. But, privileging those categories becomes this sort of nasty colonial exercise, I think. So, to some extent, being in Jamaica helped me see more clearly how a lot of those inequalities work, even here. I mean, there's specifics about Jamaica. But, people's relationship to law, even within the U.S., it depends a lot on who you are and how much power you have. And so I don't, and this is a real problem because, for people who care a lot about the law, it's supposed to be impartial between people. But that's exactly the thing that almost nobody who's doing music wants. They care about who's using it specifically or about the kind of use, and communities care about who's using it or the kind of use. Most people are much more unhappy about corporations sampling their work than they are about individuals, but currently, even more so than in the past, the law doesn't discriminate that well between them. And when you're talking about the kind of rights you can get that come out of contract negotiations, you're also not very well supported by law, especially American law, because that's labor law. So the kinds of rights that you can even afford to claim within that system are really strange and change how you do what you do with your friends and your fellow creators. And so in Jamaica that became more obvious, but I'm not sure I would say it's totally different than what happens here. I think the ways it's similar are the ways that it has to do with power. So groups that are oppressed and excluded in the U.S., their experience more approaches a lot of what happens in Jamaica among the urban poor. By virtue of being oppressed and excluded, there also might be cultural traditions that are similar too, but I actually think just the social position people are in relation to law tells you a lot. You know, I mean, why drama gets busted and girl talk does not. You know, a lot of those things, they aren't about the people, but they're about their position.
Yeah, I was gonna. Oh, you go. I was just when you bringing up girl talk and how that kind of relates to this white producer DJ guy who says we're all the same dude versus like you say Lil Wayne, we're not the same, or like so the idea that you would believe that we're all the same person when or it, like the idea of double consciousness also like my bad, I'm saying this all that it's just kind of it's easy for you to say we're all the same dude when you're that dude, you know, and like you know like you're like, I mean I don't mean to like put it on this, but like we're in this room of lawmakers and there's like what 6, 7 black people here, one of them serving sandwiches, like it's like people like are quick to be like, all right, the race doesn't matter, we can just carry on business as usual or whatever, but like obviously what she was saying, and even in terms of like how someone different cultural interpretations of the word originality, like and privileging one definition over another, that's like already like you know that's I actually don't know where I was going with that, but there's the other part that we're the rappers, we're like, you know, we went to Wesleyan University, I'm only half black, and that black half is Cuban, so that barely counts. And that's no, I mean, and you know, to Indian, like, you know, it's like not, you know, and all the examples dude was using were like DJ Food, I'm pretty sure is white, or at least Ninja Tune is a largely white label. Whatchamacall, what's his face? Danger Mouse is like half black. I don't know. It's all these kind of like black enough, hip hop enough to use as the example because it's brainy or whatever, and refusing to understand that like Gucci Mane might be like insanely complex music, even though it's like very repetitive or like whatever. Like refusing to like see nuance and complexity in like shit that sounds like it's repetitive and stupid, and like yeah, and kind of trying to be like, well, what is the intelligence in there, and like giving that you know, listen to the you hear like a monologue in a previous thing, and you don't even have to listen to the music. It's all there, like, you know, like yeah, just like listen. I don't know, whatever. You had something to say.
I was asking you about, I mean, in Jamaica where music, you might have 10 different people going in on one instrumental, one kind of rhythm. Like, how does that, in what you've seen out there, how does that, I mean, or when, you know, Vibes goes over a neo instrumental and then they try to put it out on, you know, a homegrown rhythm and it just doesn't work the same. And was that something that became more of an issue because they were sampling an American artist, and this is Jamaica, you know, this is an artist based out of Jamaica sampling music put out on an American corporation's label, or does that, I mean, that problem historically hasn't popped up with any other kind of like artists working on instrumentals when you have literally like 15 dudes going over a Diwali rhythm, or so like how does that work with copyrights? I'm just curious in like what you've seen out there.
Well, so in Jamaica, for folks that don't know, aren't as familiar with Jamaican music, there's this tradition where the instrumental track is separate from the vocal track, and often, like you were saying with hip-hop albums, when it was released on vinyl, you would have the B-side would be instrumental, and the tradition was that DJs, the music was mostly enjoyed by crowds in front of DJs. And then you'd have maybe a few of the vocalists there as well. And the DJ would basically play the same instrumental over and over again, and different vocalists would get up. And so and it wasn't considered unoriginal to sing on top of the same backing track, which was called the rhythm. And the thing is, one of the reasons I was interested in Jamaican music, besides the fact that I love pretty much all aspects of it, is that Jamaicans have been making music by means of recording technology, reusing recordings since basically the beginning of, so from the 1940s and 50s. They were like, popular music was always about reuse of specifically material recordings, as well as repetition and reference and all the things that all musical styles have. They were reusing the material, and they were using mixers, and so the technology and the reuse of the materials was really interesting to me. And I mean, sort of like what I was hinting at before, pretty much where the law would get involved was when somebody who had the material power to enforce law could call on it to try to enforce it against the creator. So within Jamaica, that was pretty much not happening at all. And so one example from recently was, Vibes Cartel and Spice recorded a song, which I would love to play for all of you, but I don't have it here, over the instrumental of Neo's Independent Woman, which was recorded on an American artist, an American label. And they did get a cease and desist letter from the U.S. When they tried to circulate it in the U.S. And so the question of legality, there's a lot of ways to talk about whether that was legal or in which law that's legal or not legal, but I think one of the things that's interesting is that, I mean, for Jamaicans, Jamaica's, it's an island, which would make you think on one hand it's isolated, but on the other hand, it's a tiny place that's created because of colonialism, because of global networks of communication and power, and it's always been embedded in those networks. So Jamaican music has always drawn on everything that's around it. It's drawn on British and American music. They could get the radio from Louisiana and Texas, and that's part of what Jamaican music comes from, partly, is those influences.
Indian.
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
only.
That's true. There's some Indian and some Chinese. Actually, Chinese Jamaicans are really influential in the music scene, and so incorporating this neo tune into it is not a new idea. People have been reusing parts of American music and other music from jump in Jamaica, and the question is sort of whether they feel they have a right to, partly because it's already part of their culture. It's there, it's around them. I mean, they don't get a choice about whether they hear American pop music or not. It's there. So, and that's how people make music, is by drawing on what's around them. And so it's again a place where I just think if you look at the practices that exist, you'd say, well, this seems to be what people are doing. How can we make this work for them, especially in this global inequality, especially when there are definitely arguments about how and where, Neo and the various people that produce get their inspiration from. I don't think it's possible to separate that stuff anyway, and I think it's more of a losing game to try, to separate, who got what from where, when. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was just trying to get at, that kind of network aspect of it.
And can I add one thing just to that example, which is, as I understand it, if I'm living in New York and I'm listening to Hot 97 and I hear the mix show, I hear the version that's on the Neo beat. But if I go to iTunes and I try to buy it, I get the other one. And that's like a bait and switch for the fans, which undermines their relationship with the artist, which could have implications down the line in that artist's career. I want to go. Do you have a thought on that?
Sorry, just one last thing I want to say about that, which is one of the tunes that I had suggested playing also talks about one of the even more affirmative reasons why I think allowing that kind of interaction is really good, which is for Jamaicans. People in Jamaica are sort of thinking about their relationship to the larger world, and there's definitely a rush within Jamaica when you hear a Jamaican artist interacting with like an American pop tune, because everyone is aware that the American pop industry is huge and powerful, and so putting Jamaican voices into American pop music is also a sort of resistant act in a certain way. I don't want to make too much of it, because I think actually they should have the right to do that because it's in their face anyway. It doesn't have to be resistance, but I do think that's part of the conversation, is how to sort of allow people to participate when they don't have as much power. And putting their own voices into this sort of dominant story is an important part of that. So.
Well, I want to go to my phone and pull up a question from Twitter. So this is from user @Kenyatta, and it's actually from about 20 minutes ago, so I hope that it's still relevant. But he asked, this is addressing Das Races, how long, it seems like you put out mixtapes really fast, and how long would it take if you went through and tried to clear any samples that you had chosen to use, or if you had jacked beats and you went to the original artist?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know how to go about that. And I mean, a lot of it would start with legal fees, which if you're a band, you know, a lawyer will take a percentage of your earnings and you don't have to put anything up front. You make money and they get money as they execute those documents. But if you're trying to put out your music, you're basically acting as a label, and the way legal fees work with labels is you need to be paid for each document executed as it goes along. So the amount of capital that would be necessary to clear those samples, like, we just wouldn't have straight up. And if we did, it would come from saving up a lot of touring money, and at that point it just becomes a losing game, and so we would probably just, and then publishing on that would be minimal for us off of if it were licensed. So I mean, at that point, I mean, that's why a band like us that's pretty niche, if we wanted to make the music we would want to make, we would have to, you know, basically fall victim or join, you know, with depending on how you look at it with a major label, as opposed to putting out stuff independently. And I mean, you know, there aren't really small independent rap labels now anyway, so it kind of keeps a lot of independent hip hop specifically from being put out there. Just like, unless you're signed to a major,
or at least like plugged into that machine, you know, like you know, it's still put out there to like the circles of people that like go to Nah Right or like go to Dat Piff or whatever. But it's not like on the radio in the way that like a major label would put you on the radio.
Yeah, it just won't reach as many of this. It won't reach as many people, obviously. So it's...
All right, so I want to grab some questions from the audience. Yeah.
Is it harder, do you guys think it's harder for independent hip-hop artists to be approached for like having their music releases for commercials or movie trailers or whatever like that, because there's an extra legal step? Because say the movie
I feel like most of the songs that would be used by movies or commercials are going to be songs that are a product of a major label machine, and so it's, I mean, but for independent artists, I mean, how many times do you hear, you know, LP or MF Doom on, you know, a movie starring Jennifer Aniston or something like that? It's just not going to happen. I mean, I feel like the one song I've heard licensed most this year is Run This Town by JayZ, Rihanna, and Kanye, and I mean, you look at those three names, you know, kind of. So, yeah, I think it does. I don't know how much it prevents. I think maybe more than directly preventing independent artists from being chosen to license, it might be the case that these independent artists won't have the machine needed to get to the ears of the people that are deciding to license the music or not.
Then again, what was it? You?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
Thanks. More specifically, though, I wonder. I mean, I agree with you with like the, you know, needing to be plugged into the machine, but I think you can see with non-hip hop independent music, you can see really small labels. I think with slightly more independent culture, like independent film trailers, things like that, are really.
You're right. Yeah, no, it definitely does, I think, cause a hiccup, and definitely, I mean, like if you look at the last example I was giving, the fact that it took so much time to figure out how we would get the sample cleared, by that time the client was ready to move on to another song. So if you look at independent music, I mean, you have bands that are just on your Pitchfork and Stereo Gum that are in Reese. That's the way bands that are our friends are making all their money right now, is a Reese's ad here, or, you know, a Chrysler ad here. And I mean, the fact that they are writing all that music means it's a lot easier to facilitate for, you know, the middleman that's middlemaning music, and there's a lot of middlemans, but it just makes things a lot easier. So
yeah, the machinery is set up to be kind of raucous, and that it doesn't really take into account like the idea of like sampling and as like a like black trope or whatever.
So, like, what would you find is you guys like, as hip hop artists, what service would you need to bridge that gap?
Wait, say that again?
As hip hop artists, then, what would you need to bridge that gap so you can compete with other independent artists that are getting featured?
Abolishing copyright laws. Or just give us a bunch of money personally to us.
Hi,
Richard parents.
I tend to disagree with the idea that there are fewer and fewer independent hip hop labels. In actuality, there are thousands of them right now. And
Like good ones.
And well, 10% of everything is good. The point is that with services like CD Baby and the other places, you can issue either an all digital or a printed CD. They will, if you are taking significant chunks of other people's music and you want to protect yourself, they will handle the licensing at incredibly low fees if you're doing all digital. If you're printing, it's a lot higher. But the point is, though, is that there are many people who will issue a single or an album. I know this for a fact. My son's issued 2 albums lately that have been iTunes only. He's gotten a lot of publicity. He's made some money. He has no major label. He has no minor label.
What's your son's
It's
called?
himself. The question is basically just that have you looked down that avenue of
This website that you're talking
using
about.
the services that are out there to create your own label and not worrying about somebody else and their lawyers and the whole schmear.
Yeah, I've looked into it. It's not a pretty picture for us. This website you're talking about will pay for my legal fees? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, they offer licensing if you're worried about
But the whole issue is that how are they going to clear a license for a song with JayZ's voice on it?
very minuscule fees.
That's all relative, but that, I mean, in terms of, they offer licensing for, I'm sure, what's original music, and I can't imagine them offering to get a song that we have sampling JayZ's voice on a Reese's commercial without, taking some insane percentage or something that, I mean, I can't imagine this website reaches out to clear samples. I mean, that's what entire industries are made of. I don't know. What's the website? I don't believe you. You need more people.
What's your son's band called? Or project?
His name's Derek Ebry. We license
All right, guys.
Radiohead song. Radiohead has plenty of lawyers.
Okay, Derek
Sold
Ebry.
about 11 cents per copy sold.
Shout out Derek
Okay.
Ebry.
All right, so we have another question right here. Can I pass you the mic?
Just putting aside the problems with actually getting licensing of all these things, which is obviously a problem, in a perfect world, if you could get a license for anything you wanted, how would you think about distributing the money that you receive for the recording to those various licenses? So, you can get whatever you want, you get $1 per track. In your mind, what is the logical way to break that up, first between you and the pool of people that you sampled, and then within that, I mean, how do you sort of think through that if that was a possible option?
I don't, but
I mean, in terms of just kind of figuring out what a split would be, or what I would imagine a reasonable split would be, I mean, a lot of times it's going to depend on who's being sampled and what they're asking for. And I mean, these days it's not. Oh yeah, I would either split things 50% with the producer who's making the beat and have us split the other 50%, or go 33%, 33%, 33%. But I mean, that I think pretty much varies amongst those two kind of rates. But I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. The most recent split I did was for a remix, and so we had 50% of the original composer, 50% of publishing go to the original composer, and more or less 50% of the master go to the remix composer, with us splitting the remaining for songwriting and for vocals and stuff like that. So that's I guess the usual split. But I mean, obviously we're not the best to ask that question too, because we probably put out 40 songs and figured out one split. And part of the reason we don't have an album out is because it does take a lot to kind of and it might just sound like being lazy, but I mean, to facilitate about like 38 songs with about like 30 different producers, and then to look at those 38 songs, about like 15 of them probably have very recognizable samples. So, I mean, this is definitely a situation where a major label would help. But I mean, if it doesn't happen, if we don't get signed to a major, we'll probably just put out an album without samples. And I don't know. I personally feel like the music might suffer from that, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know how much it will, because I feel like part of the reason a lot of people might like a song of ours like You Oughta Know is because they find it strange for rappers to sample Billy Joel, which I think in this day and age is ridiculous. It's like, I'm not supposed to know who Billy Joel is because I rap. Like, I think there's inherently something racist about that. But like, I mean, maybe ageist as well, that's true.
I just wanted to add too, though. I mean, the value doesn't only go one way, right? I mean, like when you include music, sometimes it's contextual. Like maybe you're adding something to the persons that you're sampling by including it. I mean, like I make mixes, and I don't know how I would calculate reimbursing people. I mean, I give them away for free anyway, you know. But a lot of that is promotion, and I think with a lot of samples, right? It goes in all directions, and I don't know. I just think it's more complicated even than if you could allocate it back. How would you? Because maybe they owe you something. I mean, it's the same with this confusion with radio now, where it's like you've got payola, and you know where you pay someone to play your song, and then you might get in some countries you get a performance royalty back for it. Meanwhile, they're promoting you so that you get money, you know, by having your stuff on the radio, so that you can then go on tour and people are going to come to your shows. And like, you know, it's going in like 6 directions at once, and it's completely contextual. You know, which way value is being created or how much is created in different directions, which is one of the things that makes the permission aspect, I think, really hard. Like, I kind of want to dodge all of the permission aspect and just find a way that money can be generated at the network level or at the hardware level or some other level, because I think, you know, unless you're going to do it on a case-by-case basis, I certainly don't think that fair can be defined in an abstract way. So.
Okay, so we have very limited time, and out of respect for this, keeping things flowing, I think I see one question that's been waiting for a long time over here, and then there's some question in the back that's been waiting, and that's going to be it for our panel. But people are available, and please, you can hit us up on Twitter, and we will tweet links to some of the things that we talked about so that you can check out the songs and stuff like that.
Hey, my name's Jennifer Martinez. I'm a reporter with Politico. And
Hello.
Hey.
Could you turn your microphone on?
It's on.
It's on. Okay.
I'll just speak really loud. So in November, the government shut down 82 websites, and in that sweep, they shut down 2 that are legit hip-hop websites. And they didn't give any notice before they did that, so I just wanted to see if you guys had any reaction to that.
Racism. Next question. No, I mean, so if we had any reaction to that?
Yeah, because it seems like they would do something like that in the future, because this was the second operation that they did, shutting down sites, and they did an earlier one. I don't remember when.
What was it? On Smash?
On Smash and rapgodfathers.com.
Wow.
They said it had infringing material on it.
There are very large message boards, and sometimes people put links to other sites that maybe you can download a song to, but you'd have to go on the link to find out.
I mean, I've been to On Smash a few times. I think when it's about linking to entire album downloads in the forum section or something like that. I remember the one that affected me the most. I mean, because honestly, I get all my music from like other sources that are obviously illegal also, but aren't like particularly public. But when iMeme got bought up and then destroyed and dismantled, that really affected me much more than that, because I mean, it was a great way to stream singles, particularly, or songs I want to hear at that very moment that might not be on YouTube. And that was like the use that I got from it. I'm sure people use it like they use SoundCloud now too. Did they do stuff like that, like with mixes?
SoundCloud was mostly with mixes, but it was similar. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, the weird thing about that was it was a continuation of using these things like RICO and Department of Homeland Security and stuff to deal with, what they said was counterfeiting. And yeah, I mean, partly it is like the law is written with a bunch of cultural assumptions about what legitimate creativity is, and there's a lot of other stuff happening that is associated with, the black community, with poor communities, with different communities that aren't represented in the law. And so, yeah, right, I mean, that's a big part of it. But I do think also it can be just as devastating when things are bought out legitimately and then forced to conform again with this same legal system that is not written with those practices in mind. So iMeme or SoundCloud, I mean, the DMCA is not friendly to the kind of practices under the current definition of copyright, is not friendly to the practices that even those sites are start out depending on. And so, but there's this sort of implicit social contract in those sites, which I think is part of the problem. Like, they get built by us participating in them. And then when they get big enough and make enough money, they turn around and we get kicked off of it. And so I think that's part of that's how, again, like I had more like, about that because I was part of it. And I paid for extra sound time, and I was like, now I can't get my friend's music and my music, but my money was good before, and my music was good enough before. So, again, this idea, I feel like just looking at the practices and trying to figure out how to make the law respect the practices that exist seems to me the way to deal with this, rather than sort of getting the perfect definition of creativity in the abstract sense.
I was upset.
So unfortunately, I think we're out of time, and we can do one more. All right, we have
I stand by the
executive
racist
order.
answer.
We are extending
All right.
one more question.
Earlier, you guys mentioned, getting money from live shows and from doing merchandise. And I know that everybody that's on the panel right now has put out a mixtape in some capacity and also gets paid to do live performance. And I'm just curious, in terms of getting by as an artist, do you feel what you're currently being paid for live performances covers the cost of touring and self-promotion? And is it like your sole source of income right now, or how are things being supplemented? Because from years of booking shows, I mean, artists, especially in cities like New York, where you think people are getting paid a lot because it's New York, it's so competitive, that payouts are usually crap and things are tilted in the venue's favor. So I just wonder, do you guys feel the current model of live show and merch is sustainable?
I think, for us personally, we've just gotten to a point where it's beginning to be sustainable, but in a lot of situations, if not us, I manage some other bands, and what might be the case is you're supposed to tour around the country to open for a larger band and get $250 a night, which might not cover food for 4 people, plus, fuel to go to the next city. And then, historically, a label might, support you as a band because you're going to be selling their records on tour and you're going to be, promoting their product. But now with labels kind of tightening their hands, you don't have that as much going on anymore. And so, besides the fact that you're competing with a whole lot of other people because of the internet, it's terrible. It's gotten a lot worse. And that's why, a lot of times you read about a band on the internet, and I might read a comment where somebody will say something like, I can't believe these guys are rich and I'm not because they made a Pizza Hut song. And it's like, I live in a dark, cold basement with these 2 dudes. So it's, and that's like kind of, what's scary about the idea of celebrity and the internet when it's all bullshit, really. I think for us personally, we've gotten to a point now in having put these 2 records out and having them been kind of well received where we're making enough on shows, making more than when you paid us to pay Bell House 2 years ago, that's for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Small world.
No. You were really kind, definitely. But yeah, it is difficult, and this is us as 3 dudes whose setup is basically a USB flash drive, or a laptop if we feel fancy. But if we were lugging around, drums and stuff like this to make like $250 a night on a tour, it just wouldn't be worth it. Which also just discredits. It kind of it takes away. It makes a lot of people not want to make music, and it makes a lot of bands break up prematurely, if you ask me. So
Yeah, but if you don't mind living in a pretty whack place for low rent, then you could do it. You guys, all the kids at home, you could do it.
I always love the question about how I or artists feel they're getting paid, because for some reason even this makes it into the national conversation that we should worry about how much artists get paid. But I think we should be worried about how everybody gets paid. I mean, high school teachers and garbage collectors. I mean, if that's really what we want to talk about, then like free healthcare and free education would go farther than copyright reform, I think, to solve most of these problems. You know, so
Swag.
so I wish, you know, and I feel like that's, you know, the sort of language around copyright gets so heated, and I'm like, you know. So.
I want more money for doing my rap songs. Give me more money for rap songs.
Well, I mean, I think everybody should make a living and have a good life, but like that question is a big one, you know.
We used to do 4 shows a week for next to nothing or nothing, and I lived for 2 years. Wherever they lived, I would then live. You know, and like that's what we did for a long time.
Yeah, maybe this is fresh in my mind because DJing isn't my day job. But my day job, my cushy day job, is as a grad student where I'm a teaching assistant and I make $16,000 a year. And if I didn't drink, then I wouldn't have the lifestyle that I do. I mean, if I drank, I wouldn't have the lifestyle that I do, because all that money goes to whatever else it does. So you know, I mean, so I'm in a union, you know, to try to get my wages up and whatnot. I mean, like that's the question, you know. So I don't know. I find that the answer to how people are going to get paid is just it's one of the biggest questions there is, but it's a much bigger one than copyright's going to solve. If it's going to make that work, I mean, then you also have to deal with how contracts get negotiated, which is again not really a copyright question; it's a labor question. So.
All right, this has been a very lively, enjoyable panel. Thanks to Public Knowledge for making this venue for this conversation to happen, and enjoy the break.